Hello everyone. We're going to cover repetition structures for this video, and I would like to welcome again my students for another discussion for Introduction to Programming. So let's see and let's talk about some of the learning objectives for this discussion. We're going to cover condition-controlled loops, your while, your do-while, and do-until. We're going to have a brief introduction to what repetition structures are. Um, and that's all for this video because I have another video discussing about for statements or for loops. Okay. Now, what do you mean by a repetition structure? From the term itself, right? So when you say repeat, it's like um, causing a statement to execute repeatedly, right? So it also allows a programmer to avoid duplicate codes. We don't like duplication of codes because if we have duplication of codes, it makes it harder to debug as well. Um, and it makes a program very large. So writing a long sequence of statements is time consuming. And from there, you would be able to have I would say it's more confusing to fix errors if the program itself is very long because of the duplication. Now, what are the different condition controlled loops? We have while, we have do while, we have do until. So we're going to cover like this examples for condition controlled loops for the next few slides. Now, let's start with a while loop. Now, a while loop is a pre-test type of loop. So let me ask you this. If you are on a dark room, okay, and you would like to go out, what's the first thing that you would do? You'd probably ask yourself, what is the connection of this example for this type of loop? Now, let's be realistic. If you're in a dark room or you're in a movie house, you want to go out, first thing that you would do is what? Make yourself safe, right? So you can go out of the room. Most likely you would extend your arm and you would find like probably an area where you could, you know, that you're not going to stumble until you go move forward and find your way out, right? So that means you are checking yourself first, you're making yourself safe before you go out, right? So that's what the while loop, should I say, does. You're checking first before you do other statements. That's why it's called a pre-test type of loop. So for a while loop, it gets the name from the way it works. While the condition is true, do some task, right? It's like checking before you jump, right? So the loop has two parts. So notice in my video, a condition that is tested for a true or false value, and the second part would be a statement for a set of statements that is repeated as long as the condition is true. So that's what the figure 5-1 is showing in your screen. Now, how are we going to use a while loop in conjunction with working, modules, right? To run a program multiple times, modules can be put within a loop. So on your figure 5-5 in your screen, notice that this is a flow chart that shows you while the entry or while the input remains to be true, which is keep going. If it matches with Y input, it's going to compute for the commission itself. Now, moving forward for this next slide, so it's a lot bigger. So this condition or this figure in itself, the while loop is known to be as a pretest, which means it tests a condition before performing an iteration. Now, because the test is done at the beginning of the loop, you usually have to perform some steps prior to the loop to make sure that it executes at least one. So for this example, for figure or for this program, while keep going as a variable double equals while y, should I say. So while it matches the value y as an input, the loop will perform an iteration only if the expression keep going double equals y is true. So to make sure that the expression is true, the first time that the loop executes, we declared and initialized the keep going variable right at the very top. So you can see declare string keep going. It has a value of y. If keep going had been initialized with another value or not initialized at all, the loop would never execute. So this is an important characteristic of a while loop. It will never execute if its condition is false to start with. Now in some programs, this is exactly what you want. So in this example itself, if we're going to call show commission module, let's say if it's true, it goes on the right side, which is this part, okay? They are connected to one another because of the name of the module, which is show commission, okay? You don't see any arrow going here because, you don't really need to have an arrow, and they're communicating because of the name of that module. Now we also have here your local variables. You have your sales commission. You also have a constant, which is 10%, and we convert that one to be 0.10. And notice as well with the naming convention, they're all in capital letters. So that means it's a constant variable. It allows you to enter the amount of sales. It will be stored with the variable sales. On this symbol, you're going to perform the multiplication of that value that was encoded and the constant variable, which is 0.10. Now lastly, you're going to display the commission value and return. Return is very important because it allows you to go back here on your main flowchart or your main program. If you accidentally put end in here, that means you're ending the program itself. But if you can notice on the left side of your screen, you still have other executable statements to perform. And if you end here, it's not allowing the user, or it's not allowing you to loop for the program itself. So it returns here. It's going to ask you, do you want another? Do you want to calculate another? Enter Y for yes. If I press yes, it keeps on going. So I'm going to input again. It goes up again while the condition, or while the input remains to be Y. It keeps on going to the right side, computes for the commission, goes back again to input. It allows you to input again. Now, if I enter another value or another string that doesn't match this Y input, then it's going to end your program. So that's what your while condition goes when it comes to the flowchart. Now this program 5-4 is the equivalent of your flowchart, and notice the difference for this one. They're pretty much identical when it comes to the logic of your program, but the difference is, instead of using return for this, for the pseudocode itself, you would notice that you're using the word end module. Okay, that's just how it goes when it comes to, pseudocode. If I'm going to call the show commission in here on line 9, where should you go? It goes here on line 21. Keep in mind that line 1 to line 16 is my main program. Okay. Now on line 9, I'm calling the show commission. Where do I execute? It goes to line 21. So, oops, my bad. Line 21 to line 37 would all be the body of my call show commission. Okay, so keep in mind when you're creating your pseudocode, if you have two modules going on, then that means you need to arrange it, on an organized structure. I would say chronologically. So I only have one module here. So line 21 to 37 is the body of my show commission module. And if you're done with this body in here, you execute all the commission computation. It goes back again for line 12. You're asking the user to calculate if they want to calculate another commission. Now it keeps on going on and on and on while it satisfies the condition. And where should it end? If the input does not match with the string while. Okay, so that's what program 5-4 looks like. Moving forward to another type of a condition controlled loop is your do while loop. Now, if while is a pretest, do while is a post-test, right? So how would you know? By looking at the flowchart itself, how would you know if, it's a post-test type of loop? Notice that the diamond symbol in here is right at the very bottom, right? So if it's right at the very bottom, notice that, oh, that means I'm going to ask the question at the bottom. So that's, I would say, one tip that you would notice right away if it's a post-test type of loop. If it's a while loop, normally the diamond symbol or the condition itself is right at the very beginning. Okay, so making it a little bit bigger, this and the other one is the same thing, but I just kind of zoom it in so that you can see it better. What's the difference? This one here, I'm going to compute the show commission at least once. Okay, so on your do while type of loop or your do while structure, it will be performed at least once. Doesn't matter on a general format. Let's put it this way. In a general format, the statements that appear in the lines do and the while clause are the body of the loop. Okay, the condition that appears after the while clause is a Boolean expression. So when the loop executes, the statements in the body of the loop are executed and the condition is tested. If the condition is true, the loop starts over and the statements in the body are executed again. If the condition is false, however, the program exits the loop. So if you can see here, they have the same logic, but notice although the do while loop is convenient to use in some circumstances, it is never required. Any loop that can be written as a do while loop can also be written as a while loop. So as previously mentioned, some circumstances require that you initialize the data prior to executing while loop to ensure that it executes at least once. Okay, so in here it's going to store that value because honestly, regardless, of whatever input, it's going to compute this show commission module at least once. Okay, this is going to be the pseudocode for that. Indentation is definitely recommended, in my opinion, in any programming language that you are using. On a pseudocode, if you can see here, it gives you a clear vision on what are the executable statements that you are really, that takes place. If you are indenting it. In C++, you would see some curly braces that denotes like the block of code, what includes, what statements. On Python, indentation is a big deal because you don't see curly braces in Python. But indentation will let you figure out, or it allows you to, identify what includes the block of that code. So this one is almost the same, I would say very identical to the first one. However, I am using a do while type of structure in here. So this one is a do until. This is another type of a condition controlled loop. However, not all languages actually support this type of loop. So for this discussion, I'm just going to, I would say prioritize your while and your do while. So to give you a heads up, I have another video that talks about a for statement or a for loop, which is specifically a count controlled loop, and it iterates. It's best to use a count controlled loop if you know exactly how many times you are going to iterate. Okay, there are 3 parts of that. So please watch the next video regarding the for loop, so it's not too long for you to somehow absorbed for this discussion. So I'll see everybody on the next video. You have a great day.